When it comes to monsters in Monster Hunter that should not have anyone preying upon them, Rajang is definitely the top tier of that list here. Whether it's his furious form or not, Rajang should really have nothing hunting it once it's fully grown. However, that is not the case here today. You see, all that might, despite the fact that he is an Elder Dragon level monster, manipulating thunder, lightning, the sheer amount of rage and strength behind his attacks here, he is still vulnerable to predation. Now you might say, oh, well, it has to be an Elder Dragon, right? Right? That naturally preys on Devil Joe? No. Not in this case, or not in this type of setting here. You see, we're talking about the Pariapuria, a flying wyvern that has so many adaptations to it that it is perfect for hunting Rajang. And today we're going to discuss just how it does it. What makes it so keen at hunting Rajang? Let's talk about it. Now, when it comes to Rajang himself here, we have to understand that, he's an Elder Dragon level monster. Alright? There should be nothing hunting him here. However, when you take a look at the stats of Pariapuria, it has the water element, and it can inflict poison, paralysis, sleep, soil, stun, but its weakness is fire and thunder, something that Rajang manipulates. So, if it's able to hunt a creature that has electricity, right? That's a weakness, mind you, like, a whole Pokemon thing. What makes it capable of hunting such a creature? Wouldn't it fall flat when it comes to it? Now, the reason why is because it's like a Pokemon thing, When a Pokemon has a type advantage over the other, that gives them the edge. You have flying versus fighting types, right? Where bird-like Pokemon are definitely going to beat the fighting types, right? You have electric and water. Kind of a no-brainer when you think about it here. But for some reason, Rajang falls prey to this creature continuously, to the point where the guild found parts of not only Rathian, but Rajang as well. Meaning Pariapuria has no problem preying on other creatures or other predators. And you see, what we found out is that Pariapuria is an ambush predator that is able to grab its prey and drag them into water. And this may put it in the same leagues as other big cats like the jaguar or its creature its ancestor Dinophilus. Now, the reason why I would say it seems to be more of a jaguar and, obviously the Dinophilus, right, is because it has no problem going into water. Tigerex, Barioth, Nargacuja have really no evidence of hunting in water. They may hunt in wetlands, but they're not going into deep bodies of water to actually swim and then snatch their prey in. Now, let's talk about the other creatures that, Pariapuria actually hunts here. Now, it's known to hunt Yangaruga, and really no surprise at all. Yangaruga is a simple and easy and a common prey item for a lot, and I mean a lot of predators, okay? It's kind of sad, really. Yangaruga doesn't get a break, but it has such a high breeding rate that it just doesn't matter. They have such a high breeding rate and such a high successful breeding rate that they are a common food item for a lot of predators. And apparently it's blue variants as well here. Now, these guys do have some means to defend themselves. Their Sonic Scream, and the blue variant definitely has fire, like its the Yangaruga or whatever. But, it still falls prey to Pariapuria on land and apparently water. Gogamoa is another one on this list, and he does have an Ecology video coming out for Wave 8. And believe it or not here, this guy is very interesting. It's basically the spider monkey of Monster Hunter, except it literally does the spider thing here. Considering how close it is to the more coastal areas when you hunt it, this does mean that Pariapuria is able to prey on animals kind of in a crocodile or shark-like fashion in a way, being able to swim after them and eat them. And then you have the crocodile method, which Gogamoa is likely to fall for. It'll be unfortunate if it does have, a kid with it. Now, another creature we know that it doesn't prey upon when it's at its adult stage is the crustacean Tycoon. Now, Tycoon Zamua is a crustacean or a carapacean, whichever one they call it. Basically like Shogun Centaurea and Daimyo Hermiter, except it's a bit tougher when it's in an adult stage here, meaning that it doesn't hunt it at all. Now, another thing we also have to count here is that Pariapuria is hunting these creatures in the tides, alright, or the tidal islands, excuse me. Now, as you guys can see here, while Rajang is an invasive species and will probably go into these areas very rarely, there are not any Rajang normally in this area. And we also have to talk about something else. Mariganasu is known to be its highest competition in these areas. They have a back and forth with each other. Keep in mind, Mariganasu is a flying wyvern in the same family as Espinas and Diablos. Actually, I never knew these guys were related. Oh, Baceros and Gravios too? Huh. Well, what do you know? They're all related to each other. Crazy. Now, this is actually important because it is a subspecies or in an evolutionary, I guess you could say, an evolutionary path to another form of Espinas here. Mariganasu is an electric form of, well, Espinas here. Basically the electric Espinas, if you will. Or a thunder Espinas. With obviously its main ability being thunder. A weakness of Pariapuria. Meaning that Pariapuria is actually used to fending off and fighting against electrical-based opponents. However, this is important here. Because if we actually go to, again, Rajang here, he's an electric-based opponent. Again, probably not in the same, what am I looking for? In the same light as Mariganasu here, but again, he is a very powerful and electric creature. Now, let's go over to the other things here. Pariapuria's skull actually demonstrates that it may have bone-crushing capabilities. That, in a combination with its venom, its poison sac, its sleep sac, and its paralysis sac, make its bite a whole lot more dangerous to any monster. Now, let's go into the area where it should be hunting Rajangs here, and that is the canyons. The canyons of Monster Hunter Frontier actually do have Rathaloses, Rathians, and Rajangs. Now, we do know that Pariapuria is known to hunt the Rajangs, but where exactly? It needs a body of water to perform these ambush-like hunts. Not saying it can't hunt on land, but it seems to prefer to ambush its prey from the water. Now, there are a bunch of lakes, rivers, and, etc. there that actually allow Pariapuria to make decent ambushes here. However, some of these rivers are shallow. However, one of the deeper bodies of water is within the caves, where Rajang are normally known to go in. Now, this is actually pretty important because this cave actually has a deep body of water, and it's where Pariapuria, or at least the one we fight in the Frontier game, actually has one of the boss fights there take place, or one of its main fights take place there. This is important here because this means Pariapuria is somewhat of a cave dweller, meaning that any cave-dwelling creatures that actually come to a drink are also on the menu, like Aptonoth, Kelby, Bullfangos, and stuff like that. Anything on there is on the menu. Now, let's discuss the bite of the Pariapuria and why it should be deadly to Rajang here. Now, Rajang has been bitten in before by elder dragons such as Kushala Daora and Nemiel. Nemiel specifically because Kushala Daora has more metallic teeth than, or more iron or ore-based crunching power than actually, keratin or tooth-life based biting here. Because of Nemiel's teeth here, they're more needle-like and sharp, meaning they're meant for piercing and actually grabbing wiggly prey. Meaning that it's very possible Nemiel was again preying on Piscean wyverns like I made in my Nemiel Ecology video. However, Pariapuria's bite is a combination, and I do believe this here since it's very similar to jaguars and other bone-crushing creatures. Based on its skull shape, it would probably mimic that of a Tiger Rex. Now, we do have a lot of history of bone-crushing creatures in the real world. We have hyenas, we have jaguars, and back then, we had creatures like Xenoscion, we had Dinocrocruta, the hyena back in the day, we had Hyenodon and Telodont, and we also had some saber-tooths which specialized in bone-crushing as well, like I said earlier, Dinophilus. Now, this is important because Dinophils was actually also known to to prey upon mammal or ape-like creatures such as Australopithecus. It was common. It was one of the normal interactions back in the day. Probably one of the worst ones because, again, it was an ambush predator as well. But again, if we look at the details of how it bit into its prey, it's the similar way to a jaguar, aiming for the skull and getting in a bone-crushing bite. However, again, Rajang has a lot of muscle, probably one of the strongest muscle densities, in Monster Hunter. Remember, Rajang is incredibly, and I mean incredibly strong here, and is strong enough to overpower the jaws of a Devil Joe, a creature known for literally being able to grapple on and actually hold on to smooth-skinned prey like Legiana or possibly even Mizutsune, considering it preyed upon anything it could get its jaws on. Now, you might say, okay, so if it can crush bones, how is it still able to fight off Rajang? Or at least able to take down a Rajang? And again, that's where the poison comes in. Possibly like a Komodo dragon here, Pariapuria likely bites into its prey, and with those bone-crushing jaws, it's still able to inject its venom, but this has now a double effect. It now has a broken arm. Imagine having like a broken bone or a broken arm or any broken limb here, and you're poisoned at the same time. This also attributes to its water element as well. The water being coated in its saliva as well could also possibly add poison and etc. here. Meaning that Pariapuria's mouth is just full of toxins, not to mention the paralysis and sleep effect as well. If it decides to bite Rajang with all three of poison, paralysis, and sleep here, Rajang is pretty much done for. And with Pariapuria here, this means that it actually doesn't need to do the same things like Barioth does in the Hoarfrost Reach, as it would aim for the windpipe or the more vulnerable areas of the prey, meaning that Pariapuria could likely just go on. Now, I wouldn't say it would do a reckless lunge here, but it would definitely aim at an area where it could definitely get the Rajang, likely its shoulder or maybe its arms or whatever. And again, this is a bone-crushing, poisonous bite. I don't think it gets worse than that. You get your bones crushed and you get poisoned at the same time here. Because if Pariapuria is able to grab Rajang by its shoulder, crush it, and then drag it in here, that's pretty impressive here. Compared to Barioth, who likes to aim for the more vital areas of its opponent with its saber tooth here. This means that Pariapuria is not only able to take down Rajang, but it's one of the few, if not one of the only successful predators to ever been recorded being able to eat a Rajang and being able to do it repeatedly. Meaning that this is one of the most dangerous species in Monster Hunter. But that's all I gotta say here for today, you guys. That's how I think Pariapuria is able to take down Rajangs on a regular basis. This is one of the most dangerous species, or at least one of the most dangerous predators in Monster Hunter. But that's gonna be all today, you guys, and y'all have a blessed day. Peace.